only set up that the kids can't be anybody but you. You can't do that. You have to consciously get away from that. And I wonder if there's something about masculinity there because she's a daughter. Because he didn't ever have to think of her as, I have to raise a son. And so ultimately, the only way I failed her was by not loving her enough. And
The difference between them is what enables her difference and her interests.
Or that he loved her way too much.
And that's an interesting mirror there too, because as that episode set up, Walter and Donald are both fathers of daughters, and the fact that Walt has this new baby girl, and the ways in which he treats Holly as the way he introduces her to the money hidden in the wall. You know, Daddy did that for you. She's this innocent thing that he can take care of, that he can be powerful around. And it's almost the opposite situation with Donald. He has no control over her, and it's such a frustration. But the beautiful cut in that episode where Donald is picking out the dress to put on his daughter at the funeral, and he puts it down on the bed and spreads it out, and then it cuts to a scene of Holly being put down on a bed and spread out in the same way. And there's obviously a mirroring going on there of the daughter thing too, which is different from the son thing. And the son thing that I was thinking of was the ways in which we were talking about how that awkward table moment at the Pinkmans, but there's also that interesting. We've got lots of table scenes of the Whites together, the family, the father, the mother, the son, and then we get that fantastic episode in the 5th season where it's father, mother, son, but it's Jesse Pinkman sitting at the table between Walter and Skyler, and it's the worst dinner ever. And it's precisely because he is being Walter's good son. He's totally manipulated by Walter. Walter's totally in charge of him. And what you brought up before about the fact that Walt Jr. fails to be a candidate for the good son for someone like Walter. It's just he's not going to be able to do the job. And
Walt Jr., of course, and this is what we love. I don't know that I think Hank's wonderful at the end, right? I'm probably fall down on the real hero side, but can we speak to Walt Jr. As a candidate for real masculine heroism? The way he tries to thrust his mortal body between his mother and his baby sister and his terrifying father. That kind of extraordinary moment where he rejects again everything he now understands his father to stand for, so that he can protect these other people. Right.
Which is one of the central tasks of being the man,
Mm-hmm.
protecting the women and children.
yeah.
And I want to say that has a toxic history as well as a vibrant and important history that we want to retain.
We should look toward the end of the series when Walter has Holly, and that he's sitting outside. Well, this is how they shot it in real life, but he was near Fire Station 20 on the north side of town, and what did he do with Holly? He put her inside a fire truck, and there's a little Easter egg there if you want to find the error, because the fire truck has a 19 on it. But it came from a different fire station, but he was a good dad. He took care of his daughter. I don't know, would he have treated a baby son the same way, but he was treating his little baby girl in a way that she would be found, she would be safe. Surely she would be found very, very soon.
And you can see it. You can see it occur to him too when she's saying, "Mama, Mom, Mama," that he can't really go on with his plan to take her away. He's going to have to give her back to Mom.
And that's also very interesting in all of that in regards to legacy, and that he is stereotypically, boys represent the legacy and girls you prepare to be given away.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that there's a tie back there that you're preparing them to be someone else's legacy, to create someone else's legacy. And so a lot of times with your daughters, you're much more concerned about the men that they're dating rather than the actions that they're doing. Stereotypically.
Sure. I mean, Walt Jr. is fascinating, I think, because he has no hesitation in that moment where Walt is threatening them. there's no, he doesn't have to think about it. He knows exactly what to do. He has a moral compass. And where did he get that from? Because he didn't get it from Walt.
Hank,
Very
his
much
real
Hank.
father.
Yes, I know that Hank
Hank
was
is
the
the
real
real
father,
father.
yeah.
And the thing with Walt Jr. and the heritage, I think not in the last episode, but the episode before, he tries to phone and Walt Jr. and then talk to him again, and then he knows he will never forgive me, so the family thing, it's over, and he wants to give himself over to the police, and then he's motivated by the heritage thing again, because Elliot is saying blah blah that he spent millions of dollars and the bashing of Heisenberg, and then he returns in the last episode.
All he really contributed was the name and
yeah.
playing all his
Erased
options
it.
down.
I mean, that's my thing. That's in my paper. Is what finally motivates Walter is seeing that his legacy is threatened. It's not anything else. It's just I can't let that pass. But of course, he's trying to reconnect with Walt Jr. because, like all parents, like Jesse's parents, he's trying to make his children an extension of himself. And he learns the cruel lesson that you can't shove that square peg into a round hole. He's not going to be you. So you can't.
I want to point out too, it's when Walt Jr. is on the phone, the thing that he finally said, he listens for a long time, and then he finally speaks, and the thing that he says is, "You killed Uncle Hank." So he worships the, and it even says in the original script, it's even stronger. It says, I think the words are something like, "He worships his fire pisser uncle," and he absolutely does. He uses
Vince
him as a
Gilligan's
model.
scripts have all these kinds of asides that are of motivation and such. And yeah, so it says in the script, yeah, his worship of his fire pieces.
So yeah, when you killed Hank, that's the unforgivable thing.
Yeah. Well, and the idea that Hank is the real father comes in several episodes where there's the tequila bottle episode. That's an issue, and then the Walt Jr. calling Hank instead of his father when he gets into trouble, and that Hank's first response to that is, "This would hurt your father that you chose me." So why did Walt Jr. choose Hank? Well, because I think they've got this weirdly pristine setup there where Walt gets to be the total unambiguous hero in the house because his son, Junior, worships him, just worships him. And so he's not going to call Walt, not just because he trusts Hank more, Hank's more real, he doesn't want Walt to be standing there seeing him in a failed position because of this worshipfulness that they have between them. And boy, Skyler won't break that until Marie makes her do it. I mean, all she had to do to get Walt Jr. on her side was to explain what was really happening.
But then,
And she doesn't do it.
But then that takes us to that moment of weakness where Walt's been beaten and Walt Jr. comes and Walt tells the story about his own father and how devastating that was and how he doesn't want to be seen as weak. And Walt Jr. well, that actually makes you real, right? And that type, and you get actually that kind of beautiful moment. I think that it leads us to that later moment where he protects his mother and sister, of him caring for his father, right? I want to say that it's not in this model of masculinity then. What Walt Jr. teaches us is not that it's a man stands up, but that a man bends down, right? And does so in that posture, that age-old posture of care for another.
That episode there is interesting, where Walter had been crying and sitting in his underwear crying on his son, and the next morning he needs to fix that.
Yeah.
That he was weak, that he allowed his son to care for him. His son goes and gets his glasses fixed, and takes care of him, puts him to bed. And that scene where his son, who walks on crutches, is supporting his perfectly able-bodied father to bed, to tuck him in, to care for him. And the next morning, the thing that's on Walter's mind is, don't remember me like that. Not any kind of sense of being touched by being taken care of by his son. It was all about re-emerging as not real, as his son would say, as being the artificially perfect father, so that he can have this artificial perfect worship from the son. And then the way in which that weirdly gets mirrored in a weird way in his relationship with Jesse, who also is very worshipful of Walt, in between he. But it's the realness that his son asks him for at least that was real. He's begging his father to be real with him. He refuses. He's cutting that off.
And you know, we see Jesse take that posture of care towards all kinds of things. Even while he's, yo bitch, hey pussy, all over the place, right? Think of the little boy, that belong. Well, not just Brock, but the little boy from the Spooge and his woman episode, right?
Yeah, that's
And he covers his head up when he carries him out.
yeah. Doesn't want him to see.
It's the same episode.
And you're wondering what he's guarding him from if he's been in that state for so long. Like, you're wondering like what's left to
What's
you know.
left for him to see.
Yeah.
That's the same episode where Jesse won't step on the beetle,
Right. That opens with him not stepping on the beetle. Yeah.
right? He won't step on the bug. Of course he will save the little boy. Of course his what motivates him is care for Brock. Right? And again, it's the one without children, right? Whom we see taking this posture of the true father.
Well, to just relate it very briefly to the Western paper, you know, I mean, Jesse tries to be family man, and he says he's an outlaw. He straddles both of those things. He's an outlaw and a family man, but he really wants to be a family man. I see that in Jesse. He's good with kids. He wants to be loyal. He wants to be protective in that masculine way. Maybe because he didn't get it from his parents. I don't know. He got that from somewhere, and he wants to be a family man.
And he cared for his dying aunt, remember?
Yes, indeed.
Right?
Yeah. Which at first seems a little odd, you know, but then, yeah, but in the series it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an echo to caring for elderly relatives.
Yeah, which we're seeing now again,
In Better Call Saul.
echoed in Better Call Saul. Yeah, with Tugo as the caregiver. He's this
Really
psychopath.
sweet with his abuelita.
But don't mess with his aunt or his grandmother.
And it's interesting too in regards to the relationships between the masculinity relationship, the balances between Walt and Walt Jr. and then Walt and Jesse. And in the Walt Jr. Binary, we have the entrance of Hank, which gets in Walt's way. And then in Walt and Jesse, it seems to be going just fine until Mike shows up. And so it's almost like Mike mirrors Hank on that side of his life for Jesse and then steals his son again. And he's like, I can't keep a kid, I can't keep a business, I can't keep a wife. And then we see kind of descent of the downfall there, of the start to breaking up of that. And then all the while Mike is doing everything for this young girl, this daughter,
Yeah.
that we know nothing about, but that he loves his granddaughter.
Yeah.
And so it's these unconditional love aspects are going out to young women, whereas these competitive relationships are happening between the men.
Well, and I think
The
that's
competition
interesting.
is so
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
I was gonna say, I think that's so sound, because, of course, the other thing about Mike is that the thing of your language of outlaw versus family man, Ian, Mike becomes an outlaw, because he actually takes that custodialism too far and becomes a criminal, right?
The guy tells the story about with half measures.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I should have just killed him. That was the only way to protect that woman, and I stopped short.
Well, Mike has a legacy. Mike's legacy is, and I define it in my paper, as Mike culture. He creates Mike culture. He has a cultural legacy. He has a way of doing things. And his proudest moment is looking at Jesse telling the Mexicans how to cook meth, but it's not about cooking meth. It's the way he handles them. The way he says, no, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. And Mike is like, wow.
Yeah.
You know,
My
this is
boy.
my culture. You know, he's expressing me. You know, so that's one of the things. There's a very special bond between Mike and Jesse, and it's orchestrated by Gus.
And oddly enough, Mike is a good father to Jesse in odd ways. I mean, but then
In ways that Walter can't be.
won't be, because Walter's just using him, and yet Mike seems to actually have genuine care, and and so that killing of Mike, the ways in which that seems and